welcome to another episode of Mindset, Money, Success. And I'm your host, Loraine Marshall, and I have a guest with me today, Dana Diaz. She is a best-selling author, a podcaster, and a speaker. Hello, Dana.
Hello, thank you for so much for having me.
I think we met on LinkedIn.
We did. I'm not even sure what the post or what the situation was, but something connected us, and I just love that we did make this connection because as you know, we communicated, we were realizing we've both been in relationships with narcissists and who have really done a number on us. There's a lot of things that they do that are the same, and the effects are the same on all of us, but it's something that a lot of people don't realize that they're even in until they're out of it and they try to say, "What happened to me?" And they start talking to people, and you realize that you were in an abusive relationship.
That's exactly what happened to me. 11 years. And at the end of
Oh,
that relationship, that person was not the same person. And it was such a shock to have to seek legal advice and be told to file a gender violence complaint. And my
yes.
whole life from that moment on was shattered because I didn't understand all of what had gone on in the relationship. And it wasn't until afterwards when I was writing my story, my journey,
Hmm.
that I uncovered all of the different things that happen. And I
Well,
know
I think that's the
you've actually
important thing
published,
too.
you've actually
Yes.
published three books, haven't you? So basically,
I have,
you want
and
to
I'm
go through
sorry we
that?
were talking at the same time, but yes, that was what I was going to say was that the writing about these experiences I think is very healing because sometimes when the thoughts are in our head, the memories are in our head, they get confused and jumbled and it's hard to make sense of it. But when you start writing it and you go back and read these things that you've written, I mean, I know for me, I looked back and said, my goodness, if my daughter came to me and said that this happened, or a friend of mine, or my mother, I would say, I'm coming to get you right now. This is not okay. And yet I stayed in my relationship for 25 years. And prior to that, unfortunately, I was raised by a narcissistic mother and stepfather. Um, and there was verbal abuse, physical abuse, neglect, all kinds of things. So essentially, and that's what my second book was about. My first book was about my first marriage to an abusive narcissist. But my second book was basically the answer to readers' questions of how do you end up in a toxic relationship like that. And for me, it was easy. It was my parents because I was made to feel that I didn't deserve any better than that. And that's it. In fact, I talk about this in my second book. My mother, when I would go complain to her about the things that her husband was saying to me and doing to me, she would tell me that he wouldn't react so strongly to me, meaning the physical abuse and all these other nasty things he was saying, if he didn't love me so much.
It's
I
truth.
mean, can you imagine? That's how I was raised to think that being mistreated was love. And so as I grew up, when I first met my ex-husband, that's where my first book opens, is the first time I met my first husband. And he walked in. I mean, immediately, he reminded me of my stepfather. And I thought, oh no, 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 no. I'm not doing this. I don't want any part of this. Yet I walked right into that web because the nice boys that asked me out on dates, I didn't know what to do with nice. I didn't know what to do with well-adjusted, mature, emotionally stable people. I only knew chaos.
Yeah.
And so I gave it a try, said, okay, maybe I'm reading him wrong. Maybe I'm misperceiving. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something. I wasn't. I wasn't, but I stayed for 25 years.
25 years of your life.
Yes.
Hmm. It's like
Yes.
11 years of my life and just gone. I mean, at first it was, for me, I couldn't remember any of what had the good things because my brain was only remember all of the
Right.
bad things that happened, which wasn't a good place to be. But
No.
what's the title of your first book?
My first book is called Gasping for Air: The Stranglehold of Narcissistic Abuse.
Hmm.
And, it's very telling because in that relationship, it was about 24 years in, is when I became very ill. Um, I'll never forget, actually, it was at the end of November 3rd of 2018. It was just another Saturday night. Nothing that hadn't happened before happened, but it was so traumatic that within 2 weeks after that, I had probably 2 dozen random symptoms. And I lost almost 20 pounds. I mean, it just, people thought I had cancer, that I was going through chemotherapy. They were asking what was wrong with me. And I was one of these people, so people can understand. I coached the cross country team at the school. I ran every single day, many, many miles, and I ate apples and hard boiled eggs and chicken and avocado, very healthy,
Yes.
right? So it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that the doctors were all finding everything wrong with me and nothing wrong with me. But after almost 2 years, well, maybe a year and a half of tests on this and that and the other thing, they came to the conclusion that I had been living in fight or flight mode for so long, and I had such astronomical levels of stress hormones running through me that I had become autoimmune and developed a rare lung syndrome that was causing my body just complete havoc. And it's so strange to me because I thought, wow, he was planning to kill me. He told our neighbor he was planning to kill me, and he'd certainly made some attempts, but I thought he's trying to kill me without getting his hands dirty. And that was a very telling thing for me when somebody, I mean, we all have people we don't necessarily like, but to actually want somebody's uh not to exist, to actually want to take their life is a whole other level.
Mm.
But now that doesn't mean that all narcissists are violent. It doesn't mean that all people that are in abusive relationships that it goes to that extreme. But these are often the extremes that it has to go to get justice, because more of the time than not, the way these relationships end, it gets worse at the end because when they know that they have lost you and that you're pulling away, they start really, pointing the finger and accusing you, and everything is suddenly your fault, even though it was their idea to do it. Now it's your fault they did it, and the blame, and sometimes they do get more violent, but they get desperate. They're desperate to hold on to you because they know they have overpowered you and controlled you, and they want that back because that's how they basically fulfill their ego and fulfill their idea about themselves, because really I think a lot of these people don't like themselves. They don't think very much of themselves. So it gives them that sense of power and confidence to say, "Oh, I can manipulate her. Look at how strong and I'm a big man. I can manipulate her to do everything I want her to do that suits me." Because never mind her feelings, never mind what she wants. It's all about me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, but 11 years, 25 years, I've had people that tell me they've only been in the relationship a year or two, and the effects are the same. And we all we feel ashamed that we were fooled. So we're worried about telling people. Then people don't believe us because they have presented in public as, they're charitable and they're generous. And, I always remind people of Ted Bundy, the serial killer, that he was very charming and handsome, and he wore business suits every day, unsuspecting. He had his girlfriend's daughter absolutely adored him. He was the best father ever. Yet look what he did to women. Look at all
yeah.
the women that he raped and murdered.
Mhm. This is how these type of men get away with it quite a lot of the time. They're not prosecuted on certain things that they do, and
Right.
so they're just left in society to just repeat the same things over and over till it gets to out of control, basically.
Yeah.
And when a relationship ends, I think that is one of the most dangerous times for a woman in a relationship with a controller, a dominator. It's one of the most dangerous times because they do, like you said, they're losing control, but they still
Yes.
want to have that control. Even if they've done the discard, if they've ended the relationship and they've basically moving on to a new relationship or have been cheating in the relationship and found
Hmm.
a new supply of another woman that they're going to be with, or they've carried on a double lifestyle, you know? So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's still they still want you and the other person at the same time.
Exactly. Well, and a lot of it is because they know. I mean, any person knows that if you mistreat somebody long enough, that person's going to get fed up and be gone. And it's easier for them to try to hold on to you, to try to maintain that power and control over you than to learn a whole new other person. But believe me, they all have somebody already on the hook. They've already been, I found out my, it was towards the end of our marriage, but that my ex-husband had multiple social media pages. I think it was on Facebook. He had a few different pages, and I wasn't even on there at all. And I thought, why does he have to have multiple pages? Who is he hiding from? What is he hiding? He was obviously hiding things from me, but it didn't even matter, even when he moved on after the divorce. And even still, every once in a while, I get the email that says, "Oh, you're the only one for me. I'll never love anyone like you." Why? Because he thinks that at some point maybe he'll say the right thing and catch me in a vulnerable day and that I'm going to walk right back there and then we're going to go right back into the same cycle because he knows how to work me. The only difference is that I'm wise to what happened now. I understand what happened and I have fixed in me what made me vulnerable to that type of relationship. So I'm not the same 19-year-old girl that he met. I'm 49 now. I have done some healing. I have learned how to say no. I have learned how to set boundaries. I have learned to respect myself enough not to allow people to mistreat me. So we wouldn't, if I was the way I am now, back then when I met him, I would have said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Not interested.
Mhm.
But back then I was searching. I had just come out of that awful childhood where every single day since I was 5 years old, my stepfather was saying, nobody will ever love you. You're a bother. You're a burden. I shouldn't have to pay for another man's child. Your mother never wanted you. You shouldn't even be here. And I honestly, even though you know it's wrong, you internalize the words people say to you. You start thinking, because I think any person that has any sense of self-awareness really tries to take feedback from other people and think, oh, am I that way? Did it? Because I didn't mean to be that way, or I don't see it that way. And your mind is trying to figure out or find evidence in your memories of, am I this way? Is this something I need to give attention to? Because we don't want to be, a bother or a burden or be a bad person. But unfortunately, that primed me for a situation where I was looking for any crumb of attention or affection. And
Mm.
I'm sure that there's something in your childhood, and many people can look at their childhood and say, yeah, maybe there was something that I was still trying to work out from childhood that ended up resurfacing as an issue in my next, in my adult relationships. And
Yes.
I think we tend to repeat those lessons, so to speak, with relationships until we figure them out and
Mm.
learn that lesson.
Yes, of course. I can go back to my childhood and my mother and father divorced, and I then pushed my mother away, as a teenager. And there was three of us in the family, three, I had two brothers, and my father was an alcoholic. And I
Mm,
ended up being the person who was looking after the house, the washing, and
yes.
and all of that as a young teenager, still at school at the time, and then out of school. And I think that in itself was a trauma. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then I attracted the first person who came to ask relationship wise.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up marrying that person, the first person that came. It was like, oh, freedom.
Right.
You know? So you end
Yeah,
up
there's
with a
actually a word for
relationship.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's actually a word for that in psychology. You were the parentified daughter. And
Uh,
that is the daughter that, for whatever reason, becomes the parent to the siblings and the one who keeps the house and keeps the peace and keeps things going. And that's why we see even people that were not in, that had nice parents and nice childhoods sometimes end up being taken advantage of by abusive partners because they are the parentified daughter. And what do parentified daughters do? We're taking care of people. We're taking care of everyone so everyone's okay. And especially in a divorce situation, you were just trying to maintain whatever normalcy you could in the house for everybody else, keep
mm,
the house going. And so somebody saw that quality in you. Oh, she's going to take care of me. She's going to meet my needs and make sure my needs are being met. That is called servitude. And
yeah.
that is what narcissists love is servitude.
Yes. True.
Yeah.
So yes, then I jumped into another relationship after I divorced, and that had issues as well.
Yeah.
And then the last relationship, because I've had like three long-term relationships,
Hmm.
and I say that I've been through the 3 Ds of relationship endings. The first one was divorce, right?
Yes.
The second one wasn't that good because that was my death of my partner, had a
Yeah.
sudden heart attack. And
I'm
the
so
last
sorry.
one, that was discard, a
Yes.
termination, a sudden termination. I mean, that night when he terminated it, we were entertaining some guests and having a nice drink and food and and he even said, "Come and sit on my knee and give me a kiss."
Oh
And
my
I sat on his
goodness.
knee and gave him a kiss in front of the people that we were with. And when they'd gone, that was, let's have a nightcap and have a little drink. He gone for the drinks. And when he came back, I've got something to tell you. And in 4 sentences, he ended the relationship. Just four
That
sentences.
sounds about right. That sounds about right. And oftentimes they will just cut it off. We have to remember they don't have the same mindset that we do. They don't have, I hate to say feelings.
Hmm.
They are almost robotic how they work, and they don't have any consideration or empathy for
Yeah.
how we might feel. So it is very much like them that if they sense you're pulling away or sense you're leaving, they will discard you. Oh,
Hmm.
they never wanted you. They were just with you for they have every excuse and reason to justify why they stayed so long. But in your case, oftentimes it's because it's another form of manipulation. It's just like how my ex-husband he would threaten divorce all the time. I'm going to divorce you and take the son. You'll never see your son again. Da, 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 da. And you get scared. And that's why I always warn people, if there's any fear, if you are ever afraid to say something, to speak your opinion, to do something, to go out with a friend, to go to your family, if you have any fear in your relationship, I mean, honestly, that do what you have to do, but that is not a good relationship. But they will discard you and they want to discard you so that they can lure you back in. Oh, I love you. I was having a bad day. I need you. It's you and me against the world. You're the love of my life. And then you're all of a sudden, that's the love bombing, right? They
Yeah.
pull you back in and you say, oh, goodness, I was hoping you'd come to your senses. I knew there had, and I always call it a hamster wheel.
Yes.
I was always running to get some progress, either in the relationship or to get the heck away from him. But I always found myself right in the same spot because as much as I would run, I would be going right back to the same thing. And then the cycle would end. And maybe he might be nice for 10 days. 10 days was about the most my ex-husband could go being nice and not drinking and all that. But um, at some point the cycle has to end. You have to get off that wheel and just move on because nothing will ever change with them.
No, no. I mean, it is a cycle. It's the love bomb and then the devaluation phase. And then after that, it could be the discard when they've found a
Hmm.
new person that they want to be with.
Hmm.
And then when that doesn't work out, they come back around to the previous supply and say,
Oh,
oh,
yes.
we
Oh,
should get
yeah.
back together. And so
My
it
ex moved
starts
out
again.
multiple times to be with other women, multiple times.
Mm,
And, looking back, it makes me sad that I was still there at the house with our son
mm,
and let him back in every time.
mhm.
But that, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was doing the right thing, keeping our family together for my son. But looking back, I wanted out of that marriage 15 years before I finally filed for divorce. And
Yeah.
by the time I filed for divorce, it had gotten so bad that at that point he was one of these that was very violent and he was planning to kill me. And COVID pandemic came and we were locked in the same house together. And that's actually where my first book came from, was from the journal that I kept of all the things were happening because I honestly thought something was going to happen to me. It would be made to look like an accident. We're in the midst of a pandemic. Nobody would ask any questions. It would just be poor him. He's a widower now and a single dad and probably run off with my life insurance money and nobody would ever know. So I kept a journal and
Mhm.
I hid it under the couch cushion of the basement hoping that if something happened, somebody would find it and know the truth.
Yeah. That's really sad. But
Yeah.
it's one of the things that I did as well because I remember when I first came to Spain here, I wrote my first Dear Diary entry. Before that, I had kept a journal, but this thing happened so suddenly that it was a shock. And I sat on the sofa writing in my iPad at the time,
Hmm.
diary, and I actually wrote in it feels like bully behavior and emotional abuse. You
Yes.
speak to me, the way you talk to me. And I wrote that
Yes.
down through tears. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
still didn't sort of understand about it. I didn't even realize that in the various laws in various places and countries, emotional and psychological abuse is a crime. But how would you realize from one little incident that is partly a crime? I mean, how does the woman think you don't have one incident and then go running off to the police? Oh, I think it's emotional and psychological abuse. I'm being abused. You can't do that.
No, but I think a lot of it too is that we do rely on society to tell us, what's acceptable and what's not. And it makes me sad that you were even considering what the law was, because what we endured, I don't care what the law was. I was suffering, you were suffering. These people break our spirit. They suck the soul out of us. And in my case, he had affected his health just with his words and his treatment of me, just like my stepfather, just like my mother was able to do without words, some words, but, just with the neglect and ignoring me and the silent treatments. It's all manipulation. It's all to make you doubt yourself and distrust yourself. Then they tell you that what you feel, you shouldn't feel, and what you thought you heard, you didn't hear, and what you think you experienced, oh, it was just a joke or you misunderstood it. So, of course, when you're in that place where you're writing it down and you're thinking, boy, this looks like on paper like emotional abuse. This looks like some kind of abuse. You talk yourself out of it because you don't trust yourself anymore. And that's the key to healing from this type of relationship is rediscovering that part of you that you can trust, because so many of us withdraw and we say, oh, no more relationships. I was that way too. I can't trust anybody. That's a common thing.
Yes.
I'm just going to stay inside and avoid people. But the thing is, basic human uh, needs require connection. We want connection. We want affection. We want to, converse with other people and relate to other people, community. So it doesn't make sense to punish ourselves. That's almost abusing ourselves after we've already been abused. We just have to learn to be more discerning about what we choose to accept in our life, and we have to learn to say no to people,
Mhm.
and we have to learn that we are worth more than that. We don't have to tolerate it, because if you set that expectation that you are not going to tolerate this type of behavior, then you won't enter into those relationships.
Yeah.
Then it won't be a problem. But it takes a lot of time and healing to get there, but it is possible. And it is all about your mindset. It's just about restructuring how you think about yourself, how you talk to yourself, what you say to yourself in your thoughts in your head. Even taking the other person out of the equation, what they did to us has more to do with how we felt about ourselves inside than it does about how they actually treated us. Although I would argue that it should be criminal, because I feel, at least here in the US, unless you end up shot or stabbed or dead, you have no justice. There's no justice.
Actually, in the UK, they did implement the laws of coercive control of behaviour, and there's
I
laws
heard.
for emotional and psychological abuse, and that's been in the gender violence or domestic abuse laws
Yes.
since 2015. And
That's amazing.
In Spain, the laws were put in place in 2004, and over the years they've like implemented more laws. But the basic European directive that they've signed
Hmm.
is the Istanbul Convention, and that has
Hmm.
been signed by a lot of countries in Europe, including the UK now, where they signed it quite late. But Spain, where I'm actually resident here now, and this gender violence laws included emotional and psychological abuse, economic abuse, physical abuse.
Yes.
But still, the justice system doesn't recognize completely what emotional and psychological abuse is.
Yeah, it's interesting, but at least you have the laws in place, because I know it wasn't, we here in the US, 1994, they implemented a Violence Against Women's Act. So that was the first time that a woman could file domestic abuse charges against her husband. I mean, women were fighting just to have their own bank account and their own credit card and have their own financial independence, which, the financial independence, that's a key thing for narcissists. They
Also,
try to make you dependent on them, and they spoil you and lavish you with
gift
nice holidays and
handbags and
gifts
jewelry.
and all kinds of things, and give you a nice life and a nice house, and then they blame you for it, that you made them do that for them in the end, or it's your fault, you wanted that, you're using them, you were taking advantage of their generosity. They always twist it, but it's
Exactly.
very sad that the very thing that would help us, that financial independence that would give us that ability to be independent from those types of situations, were the same laws that were keeping us in the situation. But I mean, 1994, that was a long time ago. And we're still, I mean, in 2020, when I got a divorce and things became most violent after the divorce, I was still having to fight for my need for an order of protection. And
Mhm.
I was denied twice after a gun and a knife incident. I was denied an order of protection by our justice system. And I think my opinion is because a lot of the people that are in those positions of authority where they create the laws and are in the justice system, I think that they still have the old-fashioned beliefs about, we're just supposed to be submissive to the men. We're supposed to just keep domestic things behind closed doors and just go along with life. And I'm sorry, but we're going to demand a change, because what
Well,
we have endured is not okay. I don't care what part of the world you live in or what you want to call it. I always say abuse is abuse and an a-hole is an a-hole.
that's true. That's very true. I mean, after I've published my book in 2022, I was writing that book under the threat of being evicted from the property that he left me in
Oh,
because
goodness.
It was just a matter of weeks after he had left in
Hmm.
2020 that I was promised all like financial security. I could buy a house outright and I could pay off another house that I owned. That would give me income. And then all of a sudden he'd left. He was in the house of the other woman. He'd proposed to the other woman. And then all of a sudden he was writing to our solicitor, copying me in and telling me I will leave with nothing. And all I could
Hmm.
think about was try to negotiate. And I think I tried about 6 times to negotiate, but he wouldn't, because it was like, you can't
No.
negotiate with me. You can't negotiate a gift. And he'd given me
Yeah.
4 months and he was going to return and I was going to be thrown out on the streets. And I was in
Well,
such
it's because they don't
panic.
care. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and the money's important. They know where to get you. They know what's going to affect your life and disrupt your life most. They know what means the most to you, and they will use that against you.
Hey everyone, just a quick reminder, running my website's a labour of love, but it does come with costs. Hosting, editing, and my trusty laptop's on its last legs. If you get value from my content and wanted to support my journey online, consider buying me a coffee or contributing towards a new laptop. Every little bit helps. The link is buymeacoffee.com/success with Loraine. You'll find the link in the show notes or below this video. Thanks so much for your support. It means the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But
In my case, it
weapons.
was my son.
Mhm.
He was always, even after the divorce, even after he didn't even blink an eye. The only thing he said he wanted in the divorce was his weapons, his gun safe and his guns. No mention of wanting visitation with his son or wanting any financial responsibility to our son, nothing. And
Mhm.
that was fine with me because I was not going to try to co-parent with him. I just wanted my kid and I wanted to be gone. But yes, my ex drained all of his retirement funds, cashed them out, took the equity out of our home, cashed that out during the marriage,
Mhm.
before the divorce.
Oh, the
So
divorce.
when we went for the
Oh,
divorce,
Jamie.
they said, well, that happened during the divorce, so we can't argue whether you knew, because he didn't even tell me he did all these things when he was doing them. But there was no recourse for me.
So
So
that's
there
why.
was no money, and the little money that was left in our equity when I sold the house, I had to give him half of that too. But I said, you know what? There's no amount of money that would have erased what happened. I just wanted to get done, be done, cut it off, and be out of there and have my son and I cannot be replaced. A house can be replaced, things can be replaced. I can make more money, but there's nothing worth our safety and our peace. So,
Mhm. Exactly. It's the weaponize the things that you love the most. So like if it's property or your children,
100%.
money, the weaponize and then
Everything.
because I published a book, he decided he'd been defamed and took 7 criminal allegations against me,
Wow.
which his lawyer wanted maximum penalties of 17 years of prison. So, not content with trying to make me homeless, within a month after the eviction hearing was heard, he was filing these complaints in 2022. And it took until 2024, October of 2024, for the courts, the criminal courts here, to realise the situation and dismiss all of the allegations. So I'm not still in a secure position or a safe position. I'm still precarious. I'm still in the home that he left me in. And I'm just trying to pick up the pieces. But I think it's very difficult to try and recover yourself and rebuild when you're still in a situation. So I want this situation to end, but the authorities here haven't helped. The legal system here
Right.
hasn't helped to be free of the litigation abuse, the legal abuse, and all of that. It's never been resolved.
Yeah, that's the
And so,
story for too many women,
yeah.
unfortunately. But that's why we have to learn from each other and learn to pick up the pieces. And actually, I've been asked by my publisher last week to write one more book, just one book, but we decided it's going to be a little ebook, a short one, and
Mhm.
it's going to be free.
Right.
So I'll keep you posted on that, but that is going to be what to do when you are finally out of that relationship, how to rebuild your life, because it does take time. These people do not go away. They will continue to make problems for you,
Mhm.
probably for the rest of your days or until they die. Um, and we just have to learn how to manage that for
Yeah.
our sanity and for our physical well-being.
Right.
So
We haven't got much time left, but I know that you've wrote three books. So what was the last book that you
the
published?
last book just came out a month ago. It's called Rising from the Ashes, and it talks about the stuff that happened after and sort of what I was referring to about learning to trust myself again. But my books get very deep into the psychological, where I was, all my thoughts and the things I was negotiating and trying to navigate through, to get to a better place in life. So I'm really happy with how it turned out, but there was also another narcissist that prevailed at that time. So that's the narcissistic friend, which is a conversation for another day.
I think I've met a couple of those.
Oh, yeah, we all have them.
Yeah. Oh dear. Anyway, it's been great having you on the podcast, and
Well, thank you.
we could chat for longer, I'm
We
sure.
probably could.
And maybe have to do another pod. You've got a podcast. I can come on and tell you my story.
I do. Yes, we should have you on at some point. But yes, it's all things narcissist. It's called Narc Narc, Who's There?
That's a great one. I love it.
Because you never know who's going to be at the door, right?
No, you
But
don't.
yes, it's been a pleasure. You're just lovely. And I'm so glad that we made the connection. And I'm so pleased that we were able to make this recording. So thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you for your time.
My
You've been
pleasure.
wonderful. All right.
Thank you.
All right.